Today on the Idiot's Guide, we're talking about from black and white to 4K, a revolution that changed how we experience entertainment, news, and even how we see the world. The invention of television has defined it all. From grainy bulb screens to ultra-thin smart TVs and mind-blowing projection technology, television has evolved in ways early inventors could have never imagined. I'm pretty sure I was born just to be a remote to make sure the TV antenna had a good signal and was on the right channel. How did we get here? And what if we never had television at all? In today's episode, we'll explore the history of television, its technological leaps, and how it's shaped our culture and society. So stick around because this one's going to be picture perfect. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka The Profit Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. So when I think about like my experience of early experience of television, like television's always been around in my generation, but I still I'm part of that generation as you are too. Of we had analog, which is analog means that tape reels and like the little click, 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 click to get the dial signals to work. You're tuning in using a little like tuner knob to get it to happen instead of this push a button and it gets to some digital signal somewhere. That's
you don't even have buttons anymore.
I know you don't even have buttons. You can even ask your device to do it for you. So, but okay. So the point of it is the fact that I'm from that era where like the bulb TVs, the big glass heavy TVs, and watching the evolution of even from there to where we are is insane,
Yeah.
But like you think about like, okay, what the TV ultimately started. So when the TV was invented was around, or the first basically working concept TV, 1927. The guy's name is Philo Farnsworth invented the functional television. And then it wasn't incorporated for at least another few more years, but then, over those 20 years from there up until from the 1930s to 1950s, really started to incorporate the broadcasting elements of what it was. And what it was doing was replacing our radio waves. A lot of the communication we talked about in one of our past episodes was telecommunication, and like part of that is radio wave communication, and that was really the form of entertainment back in that day. Families would sit around the radio and listen to entertainment stories where they were using sound effects and being characters, so you could get drawn into the entire thing, and now introduces this entirely new medium that takes what would be in a playhouse and puts it in front of you in a very grainy image to start out with, non-color. You're like, oh man, this is worse than a photograph.
Yeah. Even when TVs first came out, they were so expensive, they were so unavailable that everyone still listened to the radio. It took a lot of years before the TV became something that was commonplace for everyone to have.
Yeah.
And the old black and white, but you didn't need TV. You had imagination. You'd hear the stories of the Lone Ranger, and you'd just immediately envision what was happening, and hear all that stuff. And now you see it, it's like, okay, I don't have to use my imagination anymore. I can just see it right there. There's a lot of complaints about people who like to read books.
What did we call those? Luddites. Is that what you're being right now, Joe? I was like,
I think
I'm glad I got to capitalize on this right now.
I think they try to avoid the Luddite classification for this is book lovers who hate the TV being, you don't use your imagination anymore.
It's just exchanged that for now video games. Those Luddites that, or book lovers are the ones that don't like video games,
Yeah.
But I mean, I get your point. Why when there's an effective way to communicate and entertain, are you finding a replacement for that? Literally, because when you talk about, we got news, we got information, we got broadcasts, and then it transitions over to, into a television broadcast, and you have live broadcast news of network things that are happening basically in real time at this point, because they already had the signals where they're sending this stuff out in the radio waves. So now they've figured out how to make it so that there's a picture attached to that. And this is not like I would say that film in the industry was already there, because they had things like talkies before that, not the little rolled chips that all the kids love, but
talkies,
where there was no sound. It was just, usually an accompaniment piano or something like that. And you'd see those things in like, what's that guy's name? Costello? No, it's not Abbott Costello, is it?
Are you talking Charlie Chaplin?
Chaplin, that's who it was. I was like, what's his name?
Yeah.
Anyway, so like that sort of situation that really kind of revealed film industry wise. But then how did you get that now to broadcast to the everyday home? And that's really what this created, was the birth of a different medium of communication that has been, continually revolutionized over the years. Yeah,
I think it's one thing to hear what's going on, and I don't think it necessarily would apply to entertainment. I think it ended up being something for entertainment. But when you think about being able to understand what's going on in the world, it's World War II, a lot of the wars that were going on, a lot of the fighting outside of your own country. It's one thing to hear about it on the radio.
Yeah.
But it's something completely different, that when you're used to going to a movie and you see on the screen these, the footage of what's happening over there, and now being able to get that in your own home and being able to see more regularly, actually see what's going on. I think that's really what made the big difference there. Things like the coronation of Queen Elizabeth that was publicly broadcast. No one would be able to see that. You could hear stories about it, all the hats that everyone was wearing and all the fancy duds, but it's something completely different to actually see it.
Yeah.
And it really does, because as humans, we are mostly a visual creature. You've got dogs that are scent-based animals. They don't use their eyes as much as we do. They use their nose to detect everything. We as humans are visual-based. Mm-hmm. And so to hear something is very different from actually seeing it. So this was a technology that allowed you to see so much of the world.
Well, and enhance,
see before.
Like you said, like even the telegram, really closed the gap on geographical limitations. Mm-hmm. And even in the sense, like you said, if an event's going on, the coronation on the other side of the world, and this is a broadcast you get to see live, or even just the recording of that, is something that our society, like, it puts you there even if you're thousands of miles away from it. And that's something that really is a pursuit even to this day, that we go like, this FOMO that we all have. And, it's a moment where you go like, imagine the first time that the TV was broadcast like this. And you're seeing, I don't know necessarily what that first broadcast was going to be, if it was just like a radio show that came on that they're like, we should put this on television. Everyone's like, it had to be something epic. But even at the same time, like, there was a lot of leniency, I think, in the radio side, in using effects, other than I think the limitation is the fact that you had to be a really excellent communicator or narrator, because you needed that those voice influxes for the sake of just communication, to get the nuances of personalities.
Yeah.
And in TV now, you like in a television where you're watching it, it's so much more of a like. You just can't, you can't have one person doing it all. Now you have to incorporate an army of individuals to be able to accomplish something that, could have been a one-man show a week ago.
Well, I think we're even seeing that today, with the podcast world. We have a camera here that, we record to camera. And I do my fun intros when you introduce me that only people who are watching this can see.
It's true.
Whereas people that are just listening to our podcast kind of miss out on some of that stuff. So they don't know what, when we're laughing at something because I'm doing something weird or zany over here. I think I'm the more animated one than you are.
Well, and I put it out. So like if that's a good example because we have both options.
Mm-hmm.
We have the YouTube channel where you can see our podcast through YouTube, but it also goes out on Spotify. It's on iTunes. It's on major podcast feeds so that if all you were doing is able to drive down the road, and I don't want you to be like, oh, what I miss and watching a video, like I don't want you to do that. I want you to listen if you're driving down the road. But there's a lot more content rich when you watch the video of us because we have a great editor that also adds some really cool things to each one of these videos. And so if you're just listening, you might miss something.
But even when if we were just doing a visual element and didn't have a non-visual mode, it would be a very different thing because when you take into account that this is going to be listened to and not seen, you have to change your inflections. Yeah. You have to emphasize certain things that normally if I go to emphasize something, I'm going to be using my hands. Whereas if I'm just doing it audio only, you have to change the inflection. You have to emphasize with your voice. It's the radio announcer voice. You come in and you do the radio announcer. You've got to set that inflection in the right place. You've got to be able to get through all of that random stuff that's out there to be able to let people know that there's a sale going on this weekend.
There's another podcast that I work on occasionally, and it was interesting. I did an episode a bit ago, and it was an audio, and I just recorded my audio, and it just like normal. However, I went back to go look over and review the audio, and I was like, I am so unbelievably boring. Because at the same time, like I've had other people who have hosted it with me. So oftentimes like we can dynamically bounce off of each other. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the dynamics in audio is that I don't have to be this sole like just energy bringer, bring it down, like inflicting all sorts of different energy levels in order for people to have an experience because it's just audio. And so I'm working on what I'm going to talk about in the next one. And I'm already practicing. I do not want to be just this Bueller, I can't, it's boring. It's lame. I'm like, you aren't going to get anything from this because there's no energy to it. Yeah. So it's already something I'm very attentive to. You made me think of that. But this idea where you don't have to go that route, it kind of minimizes the level of excellent communicator that you have to be in order to be on television. Though there's great actors, like it's that level of, even for us, like I do something on our channel that I go into an entirely different persona, mm-hmm. and though there's some tonal similarities, I literally am aggressive in my tone in all of them on purpose. So I come across as this just boom, 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 boom. And the reality is I'm a giant squishy teddy bear. And, I don't want to hurt a fly, even though I'm scary and big,
Well, I've got my radio announcer voice. And then I've also got my meditation coach voice.
Yeah.
Which then softens all of those outlying extremities to my sound. Whereas in my radio announcer voice, I've got to really emphasize those, and then I go immediately over to meditation. And so it's all these different things that, and even when you look at the visual, you get so much more because Yeah, Harrison Ford is renowned for this being this kind of an actor, being able to say something without uttering a word. And so reaching out into the camera and just with the face.
Make love to the camera.
Well, not necessarily that, but showing sadness. And I'm not a good actor, but showing a reaction to something happening where there maybe is dialogue, but to de-emphasize the dialogue and emphasize that reaction in facial muscles.
Yeah.
And that's something that can be conveyed through a visual medium.
Yeah, it's just radio silence if it's over the radio. You're like, what's going on? What's happening over there?
Yeah.
Is anyone there still? So
you have to over-explain.
Hey, before we move on, guys, if you're enjoying this episode, hit that like button, subscribe, and hey, drop a comment. What's your earliest TV memory? What's your favorite TV show of all time? We'd love to hear any of those things. Just drop it in the comments. So then all of a sudden, generation goes by, and we have this cool thing that's Technicolor that's introduced. I remember the Looney Tunes cartoons and like the ends, Looney Tunes in Technicolor. And it was just basically like I don't think anybody realizes this now. They won't even think about that. But I was there. I had a black and white TV and a color TV. So generationally, it wasn't like, oh, today, guys, we're going out and buying a color TV. It was, we had an old TV that was a black and white, and we had a new TV that was, that was color at that point.
Wow.
So
we talked a little bit about it on the computer, talking about computers, how we always had a computer. I've never had a black and white TV. I've always had a color TV.
I have photographic memory, so I can picture it in my head. I could probably draw a picture of it.
I don't want to say we lived pretty well. I think my parents might have, for a while, lived beyond their means. But we always had a lot of technology. I'm learning more and more how much technology we actually had when I was growing up, because I never had a black and white TV. We always had a color TV. We always had not necessarily the biggest and newest TVs, but we were always maybe one generation behind on the newest technology.
Well, and I think in this one, when you talk about adding color TV to it, during the 50s and 70s. Now, I'm not that old. Like I said, we had an old TV. So that one was still a black and white TV, but we had a newer in those times, a color TV.
Yeah.
Now, but I think the biggest flex in that world is cable and satellite TV. Cable was what it was. You had this big box that was connected to a wire that came over the lines, the power lines, that was wired into your house from a cable guy, and he would connect it in, and that box sent a signal to your TV, and you'd use that box to change the channel. You'd have a big clicking remote that would do that to change the channel. But the ultimate flex was the dude down the street that had that 15-foot wide satellite dish in their backyard, that they compromised all aspects of their backyard just to fit that thing in there. And then it's only positioned to get the channels it gets when it's positioned in that place. Later on, they learned we got to chase those satellites a little bit, so we got to make this rotate. And then, thank goodness, that's evolved a lot. But really, honestly, cable and satellite dominated up until most recent years.
Yeah.
That's been the industry. From there, you have, cable revolution, the 80s and 90s. CNN is the first ever station to really 24/7 news broadcast.
Yeah.
So, but you have MTV, I remember watching Beavis and Butthead and whatever. It used to be called something else, but Real World was called something else on MTV before it was the chase or I can't remember, but it was basically reality TV's origin stuff.
Yeah. And growing up, I always had cable. I never knew a time, and like today's kids, who complain that they don't have internet service, when we'd go and visit family or anything else and there wasn't a TV, it was the end of the world. It's like, how come there's no TV here?
Yeah.
How come there's no cable? And then having to only choose, between channel 2 and channel 13. And that was it. It's like, what's going on here?
Well, and going down to Smith's to go, or sorry, the grocery store, to go to the video department and rent a video and a VCR to watch videos, okay? Before we had our own, we had to rent a VCR to watch videos from the store. Now, they weren't that expensive, but it was a whole thing instead of like, okay. We were okay. My family
I
was
am
not
learning
like...
so much about my upbringing now, because I remember growing up when my dad lost his job, they had to file bankruptcy, so I did not have a silver spoon. But I am realizing now that probably happened because they were well living beyond their means, that we had cable, that we had all this stuff going on. And it was so devastating when that job was lost, because they obviously had no savings. I think I need to talk to my parents at this point. But yeah, it was, we always had cable. We always had, I grew up on Nickelodeon and what was it? Double Dare. Was a show I remember watching from real young age. That whole thing. TV.
You know what's funny? So
I was raised on TV.
My wife had access to cable. I didn't have cable. We had normal local channels. I did have video game consoles. So I had a Nintendo, an original one.
Yeah. And
we would play that and like the big D-pad that they had where you're like running on it.
Yeah.
So track and field on there, or playing Duck Hunt with the big giant. Yeah, it was
orange,
so fun. Yeah, and so like that stuff I had, but I never had cable. I don't know why. My parents were always like, everywhere I went, even my grandparents had cable, but my parents did not. They were like, you don't need to. We can rent a VCR and watch all the things that they get.
Maybe you were the weird upbringing.
I think there's probably some comparative notes we can go back and forth on. I'll own some of it, okay?
There you go.
But it was interesting because my friends I'd go to my friend's house and watch certain things, especially satellite. Satellite was crazy because satellite gave somebody like thousands of channels. Okay, they were like, well, this satellite TV has 1,200 channels. Like, you could spend 2 days just changing the channel. That's it, And then you have like cable that was like, you'd be lucky to have 100 channels, Yeah. But all of them were like really like, you had a lot of the movie stuff. HBO was coming out, Cinemax was coming out. So all of those like big movie, risque show channels, were releasing, and the delivery of content, like not just news, sporting events, all that kind of stuff. This was transformative to how we consumed media.
And we a lot of times think how positive it is, having the news all the time, being able to sit your kids in front of a TV and entertain them for a few hours so you can go get some housework done or get some work done. But it wasn't always positive. I remember as a child, there were always new laws, new things being put in place to protect people.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was probably maybe 10 years old. So this was 30 plus years ago. There was a guy who blocked a major intersection of freeways. So there were probably about 8 tiered intersections, turns, curves, where you had a bunch of freeways coming together and going different directions. And so he went out there and he blocked a huge thing, and was complaining about HMOs. This was, some kind of a statement about health insurance. And so they're zooming in on him, with the helicopters. And this was one of the first scenarios where they were not careful enough about what they were broadcasting. because this was relatively new stuff. And I think I was homesick that day, and that's why I was watching it live. But they were zoomed in on the individual, and while they were zoomed in on him, he went over to the side, and he had a nug with him. Those of you that watch MASH know what I'm talking about with a nug. But he had a nug with him that was placed on the side of the road, and he went over there, and they thought he was just moving it, and he ended up doing something devastating. And it was live on TV. And everyone that was watching the news at that point saw such a devastating thing. And as a 10-year-old, I saw this event happen live. And after that, they put in laws to protect, you can't, show that. And they immediately, as soon as they realized what happened, immediately went away, apologized, sorry, we didn't know that was going to happen. And for days, even weeks, they talked about, how they apologized every newscast for that. And so putting in things so that you weren't watching that kind of stuff live. So the laws and the protections weren't always there from the beginning.
Well, and I think
learned about the impacts later and then put it in place.
Right. I mean, and even with radio, it's learning what's allowed. Like, even on radio play, most nowadays, even if it's live, it's rare. If you do go live and you do something that's inappropriate, like I have to disclose if this is appropriate at a certain age level.
Right.
And all of our videos I mark as not for kids, because if I do, I have to make sure that the content is age appropriate, and also it restricts what advertisers do. So it's a YouTube thing. And so it's just kind of one of those choices for marketing purposes, but it's something I have to be aware of. There's laws and rules, and if I put something or I talk about specific things, I use certain words, it's listening and it's paying attention to see if it's inflammatory speech, those sorts of things. And I think that's part of kind of what television's done is it's really shaped our culture to be mindful of these things. Yeah. And also like in the sense of how we can communicate at such a massive volume, whether that's marketing for particular things, the ShamWow, infomercials late at night, all that kind of stuff. You're like, why did you buy this at 3 a.m.? Because that was what was on TV at 3 a.m. What else do you do? Like, I'm watching it. What I'm supposed to buy it. He told me to, You're like, you should probably go to bed. That's the better choice in that. But you have this like celebrity, you create these idols that or like, I don't know if I want to say idols, but icons that, that come out of this, the culture that comes out of that, and these people that rise to the top of, all the things that define fashion, define your personalities, how we communicate. Even for me, I study communication levels. I study videos of people communicating in order to communicate, like to learn, a better form. So it's just been something that, even along the way, when we have those circumstances where we witness something that's like, okay, we probably should have rolled the tape, 30 seconds. That way we can catch this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that was 30 years ago, over 30 years ago. And so you don't necessarily, in today's world, anyone that's, probably younger than me never would have even remembered something like that happening. And so they wouldn't know why those laws are in place, why those rules are in place.
Yeah.
But there's a reason a lot of these rules are in place is to protect people, because it's such a wide open medium that anyone can be watching, including a little 10-year-old kid who is home from school who sees such a tragic thing happen.
Yeah.
And 30 years later can still remember it extremely vividly.
Well, and then you move into the next generation of televisions. You ditch the bulb, you ditch the projector TV, where you have the 3 different color bulbs behind the screen, and you go to things that are, smart TVs and LED, LCD, 4K technology. I mean, this stuff is wild. And honestly, when you said like kids, we used to complain like if you didn't have cable or, and we hear our kids like, what if you don't have internet? Well, the problem is because it's a smart TV, I face this. If it's not connected to the internet, it is a giant thing stuck to my wall. That is it. It is pointless. Okay.
Yep.
And so, well, for the most part, I still have game consoles, and I can watch. I don't even have a DVD player at this point, so I can't even watch that. Like, I can hook a computer to it and use like some way of like an access drive that I have video on. Yeah. But it literally is this, like, we get to this point where everything is now moved to digital dominance, and it's, you know, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, like major streaming providers that have defined this new era of consumption. And honestly, it's so funny because I get frustrated when a new series comes out and it's like it's a weekly release. I'm like, what do you think, your network television? What are you doing?
Why are you withholding my TV?
This is gross. I want to binge watch the entire season in one day. You know, why would you do this to me? Yeah.
Oh, I find myself doing that so often, and it's so bad. Or the other side of that is when a new show launches and there are all 12 episodes available right away.
That's what I mean. I want that.
Well, but then you're going to be spending the next 12 hours in front of your phone, just going like this.
No regrets.
Your muscles atrophy. You go to move after your binge watch session of the new show.
I haven't peed in
and you're
5 hours.
You're like The Walking Dead.
You have like bed sores from binge watching.
And so you've got this scenario where both sides of it. It's like it really is on us as humans to learn how to manage ourselves because this technology is so available. I fall into this problem as well. I mean, I've got TV shows playing all day while I'm working. It's just something in my ear that I can listen to while I'm doing my work. I try to make sure that it's an old show that I've already watched before, because I've fallen into the problem where I put on a new show or a new episode or something while I'm trying to work, and inevitably 5 minutes trying to work, I'm just watching that for the next half hour, just on my desk right here, all my emails coming in. I'm just ignoring all of that while that's going on.
Emergency. This is not, right now. Your reply is necessary right now. In the next 3 minutes, the world's going to die.
No, I've got to watch the new episode of The Rookie.
But this... Oh, I totally like... I feel that I can't. There are certain things, like I do that for music. Like when I listen to stuff, I can get stuck in that really easy with music. And so oftentimes, especially with the kind of work that I have to do, it takes me to be completely immersed in it. Yeah. And so I envy that you have that ability to be like, I don't care what it is in the background. Like I would love to do that. And then hopefully it'll simmer down to the point where I can. But right now, my demand is full attention on what I'm working on. So, but what this is like the idea that where TV has gone to the point where it draws us in, and it's, like to the level of, I've gone to the movies, and at the movies they have immersive environments where the side walls are also screens. I watched the most recent Top Gun Maverick. When it came out, I went to this Extreme DX theater, and it had the jet like in the cockpit of the jet as it's taking off, and the jet walls were right here next to me. So it's taking off, and I'm like, this is incredible. You're literally taking off with this jet, and the whole room is moving with you. It's like, that's the level of like tech that you can have in your home at this level, especially with like the kinds of projection that they have now, that they have like a central element to the screen. But if you have a room that's all white walls, you can make it all work. They have exhibits that do that because of it, that like the Van Gogh exhibit, where you can walk through the whole thing. There's a whole lot of projectors going on, but that's the entire environment is the art. And so it's super cool to kind of see that where it started as this little bulb thing that kind of showed grainy images to this completely, you can stand in that space, immersive environment is incredible, Yeah.
And just being able to walk around and having VRs. I mean, things like Pokemon Go. where you can be playing a video game with the world around you, and it changes based on what's going on.
Yep.
It really is a different way of processing.
You know, and also like, from this, how we are delivered the content on some channels. I remember like right now, a lot of the streaming services, they're going, how do we keep, our membership fees low? And by adding things like advertisement breaks, you really can. And I think what's happened is, you see this change from what was a commercial on television before. You're like, oh, it's a Tide ad,
Yeah.
And now it's turned into this, unfortunately, repetitive same commercial every time there's a break for each episode. So I'm like, did you sponsor this entire episode? Is that what's happening here? You guys aren't creative enough to have 3 different ads, and that's just I get irritated off of that because I have a lot of streaming services, but I don't like paying a ton. So I pay for the one that's the commercial one. And so like I'm watching this really big movie and I'm like, oh, this is going to be so super cool. And it's like commercial, and it's like the T-Mobile ad for, I'm like,
or the Swiffer Wet Jet. I get all those on Freebie.
Some kind,
That's how much I watched. I know the jingle.
But the TV commercials have evolved because the idea that advertising on regular television is not getting nearly the audience that streaming services and on-demand services have now. So the ones who have moved over to advertise on those platforms are getting the most play, and it's just smart business in the sense of where the industry is going. You see that standard television is really, very quickly starting to become irrelevant. You see a lot of those major networks that have been around for years and years now have shifted to go like, you can watch it here, but we also have it here on demand for the rest of eternity, And all right, guys, so while we're talking about screen time, let's talk about another screen you should be watching, your financial dashboard. Our financial empowerment membership is designed to give you the tools and insights to take control of your money. Whether you're looking to break free from your financial stress or build wealth or just make smarter money moves, we've got you covered. Click the link in the show notes or click the link in the description and you join today and take the first step toward financial freedom. Because just like TV changed the way we see the world, smart money habits can change your future.
Now, we also do on that, I don't know if it's up yet or if it's coming up, actually talk about whether to stream or to buy.
Yes, it will be up shortly.
There you go.
Okay, so have to throw this in. Kind of a what if scenario. What if we never had television? What would happen?
We'd probably still be playing some of those old the hoop and stick games, running down the street, kicking the hoop with the stick. That's what we'd be doing, right? That's what the Luddites want us to think.
Pogs would take off. Pogs, No? I was a Pog guy. I had Pogs.
Oh,
I still have Pogs.
Big old bags of Pogs. But I mean, Pogs were popular because of TV, because you had all the little,
that's true. They advertised on there. You're like, oh man,
we'd be playing with marbles.
Everybody's doing this. Yeah.
Pogs was like an advanced marbles.
Okay.
So we'd be
marbles.
We'd be out there playing with the marbles.
Oh goodness, marbles.
Jacks. I could never play jacks. Maybe I'd be better if we didn't have TV.
You'd have more time to practice. But even without the entertainment value of television, just communication in general, you have the radio that was, there. Maybe that would still be the case. But, what I think is each one of these was progressively replacing one medium with another. You still have radio.
Could you imagine the Marvel Cinematic Universe only on radio?
Oh, man.
No TV, just radio. How would that be?
I mean, I think that it would, I don't know. You know, what is it, like Space Invaders was one of the ones that was like a big radio broadcast?
No, not Space Invaders. It was, what was it? Mars Attacks. I think
Mars Attacks is the movie.
Well, so there's, I think Mars Attacks is a comedy based on the original story, but it was
Great movie. Funny. So funny.
I can't. I know exactly which one you're talking about. We'll have to put it on the screen because I can't remember what it is. But I know exactly which one you're talking about. People thought that this was a real event.
Yes.
That they were being invaded by aliens.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind or whatever it was. No, that was a movie.
Well, they later made it to a movie. It's a short guy does his own stunts movie. Tom Cruise movie. They made a movie out of it. But yeah, so that's that was a radio broadcast that everyone thought this was a real thing that was happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Close Encounters of the Third Kind. No,
you
I
already
just said that.
mentioned
Yeah. Jeez Louise.
We'll put it on the screen.
It's my old age.
We'll put it somewhere in there. Maybe
age.
we'll do a ADR it in so that as we're talking about it. Adam's a genius, so he'll every time he says what is wrong, ADR will actually go in there and say this is the right answer.
This is the correct one. Adam's an idiot. Which is why I'm guiding. So, like, you'd have less cultural moments. You would not share in watching, the first man on the moon. You wouldn't see the space launch of things. Even to this day, like watching SpaceX do its crazy catch of the stuff coming out of the sky sort of things, like just some really cool moments. You wouldn't be able to see the stuff that happened on 9/11 and events of our life that are just defining moments that we would go, we hope that the personality is super expressive on whatever broadcast, if that's even an option of that case. Otherwise, you're pretty bad. You're pretty much playing marbles in the dark. That's it. So, super boring and lame. Pick up an instrument and try to learn that. But you can't look up anything because it's not available for you to look up any tutorial videos. Would radio and books have remained dominant in an element of how entertainment was made? I would honestly say that it would be the rise of the play, the Broadway kind of stuff, where you have the Shakespearean world would be that dominance, especially for entertainment levels.
You'd probably have a lot more traveling bard troops.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if we took this on the road?
I mean, it's not unusual for podcasts to do that, but it takes a whole production to do that part. Maybe someday it'll.
It'd probably be a lot easier without television.
Well, so television didn't just entertain it. It connected us to each other. And honestly, like, I think without it, the world would just be a lot quieter. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Would it be better if that's quieter?
It's hard to say.
So, looking back, you have this evolution of television from early days black and white broadcast to the explosion of color TV and cable and satellites. Finally, streaming, projection technology, television has really shaped how we see our world around us. And honestly, like if that what if kind of scenario were to happen, I don't know, man. Like, I think it's just kind of some perspective of looking at this and saying how much we take for granted the ability to binge watch and forget to go to the bathroom through 5 hours of television watching and, some favorite series, and complaining about a 1 minute long ad break because we hate ads now. It's agonizing. Why do you disrupt my thought process about how much I'm devoted to this character that has no clue who I am, it's odd that we've gotten to this extreme, but we have. So, it's almost been 100 years of this, pretty close. And, I guess the question I would throw out there is, what's your favorite TV technology advancement? Is it the, what did they call the I had one. Not an LCD screen or it's the plasma television.
The plasma.
Those things were so, mine would overheat after about 2 hours of running. That thing would be like, I can't turn on it. I'm done. We're overheating. I'd get this little warning light and then it would shut down. And then I couldn't touch it. It would not let me do anything until it cooled off. I was like, I think this is broken. I don't think it's supposed to do this. But
yeah.
Do you think that traditional TV as it was generation is dead? Especially when we're talking about even cable networks and cable providers have shifted to a digital resource. So it's over the same lines that streaming channels get. You get cable TV now. So, how is that going to evolve into the future? I think honestly we've already seen that that's the newest transition from when cable TV was first introduced, and then satellites, and now on-demand streaming is kind of the next sphere of this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. That's just kind of some food for thought. And I forgot to put this in, but jokes for Joe.
Jokes for Joe or jokes with Joe?
Jokes with Joe. Jokes. All right. Let me see. We're going to edit this part out. Okay. So
we're going to leave it all in.
No, I'm not going to leave
This is all being left
Time
in.
for jokes with Joe.
There you go. We got it. There you go.
That was the joke.
All right.
I am the joke. The butt of the joke.
All right. What did the baby corn say to the mama corn?
I have no idea.
Where's popcorn?
Oh, that was terrible.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be fun to edit. We have reached the end of our show for today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, hit like and subscribe. Life's too short. So keep laughing and learning. And remember, idiots have way more fun.
Check your shoes.